Well, good morning and welcome to Navigating the Orange Line Closure. I'm Jim Rooney, President and CEO of the Greater Boston Chamber of Commerce. Over the past 7 years, the Chamber's embraced and elevated transportation as a priority issue for our business community. And when the MBTA announced on August 3rd that the Orange Line would shut down for 30 days, predictably the phones started ringing and the emails came in quickly asking what's going on. The Chamber quickly created the Orange Line Resource website page and started working with the T and the City of Boston to get the information our employers and their employees needed. In support of our business community and commuters, and to help the MBTA with its communications efforts, I spoke to TGM Steve Poftak over the weekend and invited him to join us in this virtual discussion. So we're very grateful that Steve has made time today to have a conversation. As we consider the future of our region, a safe and reliable transit system is critical to advancing our economy. The vibrancy of the Commonwealth, the opportunity and access for communities and neighborhoods across the state. For all of us across the Commonwealth, the safety and reliability of the MBTA remains a concern, especially as we saw the Orange Line train fire recently and several incidents on other MBTA lines and buses. This discussion will focus on transparency and steps for our employers and employees traveling during the shutdown. Before we get started with our conversation, a few logistics. Today's webinar is being recorded and will be shared on the Chamber's YouTube page. I encourage you to utilize the chat and Q&A function during today's conversation. We will also distribute periodic poll questions during this event for you to tell us about your commuting experiences. And with that, I'd like to introduce Steve Poftak, General Manager of the MBTA. Steve Poftak joined the MBTA as General Manager in January of 2019. General Manager Poftak, who previously served as the Vice Chair of the Fiscal and Management Control Board and as a Director of the MassDOT Board since 2015, comes to the T from the Harvard Kennedy School, where he was the Executive Director of the Rappaport Institute for Greater Boston. Previous to that role, Steve was Research Director and Director of the Center for Better Government at the Pioneer Institute for Public Policy Research. Steve, a big thank you for joining us today and making the time during what I know is quite a busy schedule. We've got over 300 people that have joined us today to listen in, so a popular topic. Format today is Steve's going to give us a 6 or 7 minute overview of the plan, and then we'll have a conversation and hopefully get to some of your questions. So Steve, welcome, and I'll turn it over to you.
Great, and thanks so much for the invitation, Jim, and thank you to the Chamber for giving the T this platform, and thanks for everyone who's shown interest and has shown up for this event. Obviously, we know this Orange Line surge is a huge happening. It's a huge happening for the T. It's a huge happening for this region, and we acknowledge that it is inconvenient, but we believe this is the type of bold and decisive action that is needed to prioritize safety at the MBTA, safety for our customers, and safety for our employees. So we announced at the beginning of August a 30-day suspension in Orange Line service. It starts tomorrow, Friday, at 9 p.m., and we'll be resuming service on Monday, September 19th at 5 a.m. By shutting down the entire Orange Line, we're able to make major, expansive, and comprehensive repairs on a number of areas, but with a real specific focus on track maintenance as our highest priority items. And this is consistent with one of the FTA special directives that came in that called for us to provide expanded access to tracks and also called out several specific areas on the Orange Line where we needed to make improvements. By the difference between a shutdown of this magnitude, 30 days of 24-hour complete unencumbered access to the Orange Line is much different than doing work on the overnight, where after the service has ended and you've shut everything down and you've set up your workplace, you might only have an hour or two of productive work time. Here, we're going to have 24 hours a day for 30 days, and it's going to allow us to accomplish the same amount of work that we would accomplish in 5 years of weekend and nighttime diversions. So it's a way to get a lot of work done and get it done in a much more efficient manner. We're going to be doing a number of things. I mentioned we're going to prioritize track maintenance. We're going to address a number of obviously we're going to address the areas that there were 4 areas the FTA noted specifically. We've already addressed one of them. We're going to address the other 3 areas. We're going to address a number of other areas on the Orange Line where we currently have speed restrictions in place. We're going to be able to remove those speed restrictions over time. They're not going to be removed immediately because you have to test. You sort of have to go through a test and burn-in period. But those speed restrictions will be coming off over time, so folks are going to have a faster ride on the Orange Line. We're also going to upgrade a lot of our infrastructure along the line. We're going to be upgrading signals at Oak Grove and Malden. We're going to be replacing crossover tracks up and down the system. We're also going to be doing an extensive series of rebuilding at the Wellington Yard and Maintenance Facility, which is going to allow us to better accommodate the new vehicles as well. Now, obviously, we know that this is very disruptive to folks' travel patterns. And if Jim will indulge me here, I will share briefly. This is the alternate path of travel that we are providing to folks. We will be providing shuttle bus service from Oak Grove to Government Center for the northern end of the line. And then folks at Government Center, folks will be able to get on the Green Line and travel southward. If they need to continue their journey at Copley, they can catch a shuttle bus that will then take them all the way to Forest Hills. So that's sort of the straight bus, Green Line to shuttle bus diversion. We are also really encouraging people to utilize the commuter rail system as an alternative. If you go on our website, we have comprehensive rider's guide to planning ahead for the closure of the Orange Line and the partial closure of the Green Line. That has the timetables for the commuter rail. Traveling from Forest Hills in the morning between 6 and 9 a.m., you're actually going to have 7 inbound trains that you can board. Traveling from Oak Grove to North Station, you're going to have 4 trains you can board. And by showing a Charlie card on the train, that will be your ticket to ride. So please, take a look at that timetable that's in the rider's guide, and please consider that as an alternative. We'll also be beefing up service on a couple complementary routes, including the Silver Line 4, which is also, in some cases, a useful alternative for folks who were originally taking the Orange Line. I will now release the screen, and we've had a number of great partners on this. We've worked closely with the municipalities along the route. We have also worked with the highway department in order to set up a number of dedicated bus lanes and to make sure that we've identified any choke points and that we've got police details and other traffic management techniques in place to make shuttle bus service as convenient as possible. We do encourage people to follow us on social media. We also have a dedicated website, mbta.com/BBT 2022, where you can access that rider's guide to planning ahead. We've translated it into 8 languages, and we are now in the process of making sure that everything is buttoned up so that we can begin running those shuttle buses at 9 p.m. tomorrow and begin to get all that work done in the 30 days we have allotted. So we do thank our riders for their patience. We are working hard to improve the MBTA, and we look forward to reopening the Orange Line with better service, more new cars, and improved infrastructure and a faster, more reliable ride for our customers. So thank you very much again for the platform, Jim, and happy to have a discussion with you and also take questions from the audience.
Well, thanks for that overview, and I'm going to apologize to our audience right out of the gate because as Steve and I get talking, we may lapse into some transit industry jargon, and if we do, we'll try to remember to define some of what we're talking about. I want to go a little deeper, Steve, into the service plan and some of the work that you're doing, but I want to frame the conversation first. And as I said in the introduction, you've been involved directly with the T, first on the control board and now as general manager for 7.5 years. And a lot of work has been done. I know you and the governor are quite proud of the investment of $8 billion over that time in the T. Yet here we are shutting down a line for a month, a couple of high profile incidents over the last few months in particular. From your perspective, sort of in that role for 7.5 years, what's your assessment of how we got here to the point where that we're shutting down a line like this?
I mean, I think that part of how we got here is decades of underinvestment. A little over a decade ago, we were investing less than $400 million a year in the MBTA on the capital side. That is not nearly enough. Right now, we're still counting up what we were able to invest last year, but it is surely north of 1.5 billion. And we have a capital plan, fully funded 5-year capital plan that comes close to about $2 billion a year is our aspiration for the next 5 years. And I believe the system needs that. I think what we're also taking a look at, and I think the FTA safety management inspection has been very helpful in this regard, is ensuring that not only the replacement work is going on, but that we've got an adequate level of operational maintenance going on at the same time, and that when there's possibly a tension between the two, that we're being thoughtful about it. But I continue to believe we need to invest in this system over a long period of time. And I think what you're seeing in this 30-day closure is the realization that the MBTA cannot be modernized in its entirety on nights and weekends. We are going to have to make, and we've been doing this gradually. We started off, for folks with really long memories pre-COVID, we started off in the fall of 2019 doing some weekend closures in the core of the system to replace some pieces of track that hadn't been touched. We've been doing longer diversions across the system periodically, particularly if you're on the Green Line, on some of the branches, you've experienced that. We are now at that next stage where we are doing a major closure and trying to figure out how many projects we can get done at once. But it is going to take a sustained level of investment in this system to bring it up to the modernized state that our customers deserve and, frankly, that our workforce deserves.
Yeah, maybe following up on using the tool of diversions and closures. And I do applaud the decision to do that during the pandemic. One question out in the public domain when they sort of heard of this shutdown was, of course, why didn't they do it when there was lower ridership during the pandemic? Do you want to address that question?
Yeah, I mean, first we did a bunch of closures during the pandemic. Again, those with long memories may remember in May 2020, we did a 2-week closure on the Blue Line, which was, unprecedented at the time. So we did do a number of closures. I would say, if any of us had the foresight at the beginning of the pandemic to understand the length and depth of what the pandemic would be, I think we could have planned ahead. My sense is that no one had any. I mean, every plan we made during the pandemic, we found ourselves revising 3 months later. I would also note that, I hear this euphemism, no one was riding the T during the pandemic. That's false. That is categorically false. People were riding the T, and the people who were riding the T were the most transit dependent among us. If you think about the way, not just you, Jim, but if the audience sort of thinks about the way they conducted their lives in April and May of 2020, I mean, I can tell you we had 1,000 senior taps per day on the MBTA, which again doesn't sound like a lot given the breadth of the system, but 1,000 seniors a day had to use the T for something. And if you think about sort of discretionary travel and how people, particularly seniors, were behaving at that moment in time, those folks needed to use the T for some reason and some critical reason for them in their lives. So, the idea that it would be simple or easy to shut down the T during the pandemic, I think is a little bit of revisionist history.
Yeah. You kind of alluded to this, but I want to kind of go right at it. A shutdowns and diversions, maybe not of this scale of a whole line, but maybe segments of lines. Given what is needed to create, as you said, the T that we all want and deserve, is this a part of our next 3, 5, however long years? Is that something we should expect to live with?
I think applied judiciously. I mean, I will say we've been doing these shutdowns for a while. Again, if you're on the folks on the C, D, and E branches of the Green Line have experienced this over the past 2 years. We've been doing early access. For instance, most recently, we've been doing early access shutdowns on the Braintree branch of the Red Line. So, that process of doing diversions has been well underway. I think doing a diversion of this scale obviously is unprecedented, but we think the needs of the Orange Line demand it, and the acuity of some of the issues demands it.
Yeah, you're right. I mean, diversions and shutdowns of segments of lines have been in the transit toolbox, not just here in Boston, but across the country and the world, really, for a long time. But as you said, a whole line is somewhat unprecedented, surely here. Let's do a little bit deeper dive into the decision. A decision was announced on August 3rd, caught a lot of people off guard that in just 16 days we're going to shut down a whole line. A lot of planning goes into diversions, whether it's the service plan, the work plan, the communications plan. And I know you and your team have done a lot of work in partnership with the city and others over the last 15 days. But give us a lens into the conditions of the Orange Line, and was there something that happened in July, or what drove you to, I'm guessing, walk up to the governor's office and say, I want to shut down the whole line for a month, and we're going to do it with such short notice? I mean, what precipitated that versus, something maybe that didn't have the same kind of commuter impact?
Yeah, it's a great question, and one I'm happy to expound on at length. I'll try to keep it reasonably brief for your benefit and the audience's. There's a couple issues. One, we did have a number of diversions planned. For instance, we were going to close the northern end. We had originally planned to close the northern end of the line for roughly the month of August. And then we had a number of other weekend diversions planned throughout the fall and the spring to address a number of issues. One of the things we took from the FTA directive on track maintenance was, one, their identification of specific places that the 4 places I mentioned, 3 of which still remain to be fixed, that they wanted to see addressed. And I think overall, kind of a strategic guidance from them that putting in speed restrictions and then scheduling work sometime in the future to fix the issue that's causing the speed restriction was not the strategy they wanted to see us employ. They wanted to see us make the repairs, lift the speed restriction when prudent, and take that approach, and a clear directive to provide greater access to the track. As we looked at the accumulation of projects that we wanted to get done, we felt like we had a body of work that we really wanted to get done and wanted to get done with some dispatch. Then the other precipitating factor is to run this diversion. We believe it will take the shuttle buses. It will require between 160 to 200 shuttle buses. For folks who don't swim in these waters, the third-party bus market is not as liquid as you think it is. To get this number of buses is requiring us to essentially get every available accessible bus east of the Mississippi. That's what our team has told us, that we have every bus. We have drivers who are coming in from out of town and are being put up in hotels. It is not you don't pick up the phone and get 200 buses. It is a monumental task. And we were also told that there were other properties that were ready to take those buses. And if we didn't get them during this period of time, we would have to delay the project by months at best. So we really felt like we had to strike while the iron was hot here. Really want to thank everyone from our municipal partners, entities like yourself that have helped us get the word out. Obviously, in a perfect world, we would love to have the luxury of more time to do this, more time to talk things through and work things out. We felt that the opportunity was compelling enough that we need to do it, and we needed to be decisive and bold in doing it. So we made that decision.
Okay. My friends over at A Better City had, put forth an alternative of shut down pre-Labor Day and then maybe do nights and weekends, extended closures, post-Labor Day. Could you talk about, that alternative versus the one you chose? And I'm sure you weighed a number of different alternatives and approaches to tackling this, but what made, a one that would be less disruptive, particularly after Labor Day, not the right option?
Yeah, then, I should preface this by saying, obviously we're appreciative of the thoughtfulness of that work and the input that we get from lots of different partners on this. When our team looked at it, we felt that the advantages in terms of minimizing the weekday disruptions were outweighed by the advantages of having 30 full unencumbered days that allow you to get the work done. It is not simply algebra in terms of if you can make the hours equivalent, it's an equivalent shutdown. The problem is if you're only doing things on weekends or some form of weekend plus shutdown, you have to put everything back together on Monday morning. So there's a limit to the amount of work that you can do, and you also have to be constantly monitoring the work so that you can put it back together in time to run service. So by having 30 unencumbered days, it's going to allow us to be more aggressive in the projects we're doing. So, we did review a lot of different options carefully. We have lots of weekend diversions. We have lots of early access diversions. We employ that tactic in a lot of places where we think it's appropriate. In this case, we really thought 30 days of unencumbered access was particularly useful to us in terms of getting projects done.
So you knew it was going to be painful, but you decided to rip the Band-Aid off quickly instead of slowly, it sounds like.
I think that's the type of action we need. If the last couple months added to the last 7.5 years, if we've taken anything away from that, it's that we can't kick the can down the road. We really need to take bold and decisive action, and that's what we did. And I don't want to gloss over the fact that we know that this is going to be inconvenient for people. We're doing our best to minimize that inconvenience. We are hopeful that they take advantage of either the diversion buses or really take a good hard look at if the commuter rail will work for your commute, because I think in many cases it's going to be a much more efficient commute for people. So we really encourage folks to take it.
Steve, you've alluded several times to the review of FTA, and I guess the question is how much of their work played into this decision, and what's the update on their timing of the review?
They continue. They continue to finalize their review. They have, I think, reconfirmed to us. They had said previously, and I think we had said previously, our expectation is it will come out at the end of August. They have reconfirmed that remains their target release date. In terms of your question of how it fed into this, I think that the clear directive that we need to give our crews more access to the track to do more track work. I think that certainly played into this. and this is a subject I think you probably know better than I, just from your breadth of experience. But on the overnight, by the time service has stopped, you've cut the power, you've set up your equipment, you've done your work, and then you take it all apart again. You get power turned back on, and you get the service running again. You have a very small window. You have a crew working an 8-hour shift that might only be spending 60 to 90 minutes doing actual physical work on the track. Here, we've got the entire shift they'll be able to work on the track because they don't have to go through this process. So it's just much more efficient.
Yeah, it certainly is. And what Steve's alluding to is that I started my career at the MBTA in the 70s as a nighttime track laborer. So I worked in those windows on those tracks. So it's a brief window of opportunity to get work done. I do want to I don't know if the word is challenge, but I think on behalf of some of the questions we've heard from about the claim or the boast that you're going to do 5 years worth of work in 1 month. Could you, help us understand that? It sounds a little incredible. So what's the calculation there that allows you to say that?
Sure. The calculation, we have a number of projects queued up. I think we're planning very carefully so we can, if we have to add or drop projects, we have the ability to add projects if we find ourselves more productive. And if we feel challenged, we can push a couple projects off if we need to. But if you look at the universe of projects that we are planning to do, if you were planning to do each one of those projects individually on a night or a weekend, the amount of time you would need to do it, you'd need to sequence out 5 years of weekend and nighttime diversions.
Oh, okay. So you talked about the taking advantage of an open 30-day work window. You can take everything apart. Anyone who's ever done a home renovation knows that, if you want to do the kitchen over, you got to get everybody out, and you can't keep putting it together so you can cook dinner every night. So you've got a 30-day work window, 7 days, 24 hours of work. Is that the plan?
That is the plan. Yes, we're going to have people. All over the place doing multiple projects, and I appreciate the question because this isn't a single project on one piece of the line, right? It is. We have multiple. We will have multiple projects going on across the line, across the entire Orange Line, literally from Oak Grove to Forest Hills. We are doing a lot of careful planning. Just because, again, you likely know more about this than I do, but there is a choreography in terms of getting materials in and out, getting work vehicles in and out. There's a limited number of access points across the Orange Line. We have more projects than access points, so we have been working very carefully on the choreography of making sure we've got materials where they need to be. We're already pre-positioning materials for certain projects, and we'll be doing projects across the line. We also have a bullpen of piggyback projects. If we have the time, access, and resources to do it, we'll do more. And I should back up here. Our priority is that everything gets done safely. We want everyone to work safely. Safety is a priority above everything else. So if there's a moment in time where we're not as productive as we'd like, but it's in service of safety, I will accept that trade-off. So we've tried to plan very carefully so that each project has enough time to get its work done, and we've added in a little bit of a buffer because I know one of the I may be skipping ahead here. One of the questions is, are you really going to reopen in 30 days? And our intent really is to reopen in 30 days. We have planned and added in contingency so that we can do that.
Okay. So, as I read the plan, Steve, it looks like there's 4 access points and I think 14 work zones along the line, if I did my math correctly. So
yeah, that's about right. That's about right.
Quite a bit to do. You mentioned some of the types of work that's going to go on, and I believe you referenced track work as one of the priorities. But what's the 3 elements of this work that Steve Poftak is glad to cross off his list of getting done on the Orange Line? That, boy, we're finally getting to that, and I'm glad that one will be dealt with.
You're asking me to choose my favorite child here. I think all the track maintenance work is critically important. to be able to get a lot of this off, to be able to lift a lot of these speed restrictions. I think folks are going to have a much faster ride on the Orange Line. Again, I think you know I live on the south side of the city, so I'm a frequent commuter down to Forest Hills. The slowdowns are palpable, right? It is apparent where we have a number of slowdowns. So be able to work through a lot of those, I think, is important. Also to replace, and again, this I'll try to keep to our pledge of avoiding jargon. We're going to be replacing crossovers in a bunch of places, which is simply the places kind of outside of the ends of the system where you can cross a train over from one track to another, which again allows you to make more efficient diversions. It allows you to address if there's some kind of stoppage or discontinuity in service, if you need to cross a train so that you can get them back in sequence. It adds to the reliability of service. So I'm pretty excited about all of these projects. To be honest, I do not have a favorite.
You don't have a favorite. Okay. You've talked about safety, appropriately so, in improving safety in the line and reliability and eliminating the speed restrictions, a faster ride. Those are all of what I think people hope will come out of this. But can you better define that in terms of selling the public on this project? For example, today it takes X minutes to take the trip from Forest Hills to downtown crossing. When we get these speed restrictions off, that's going to improve by this many minutes or this percentage. Can you put your salesman hat on for this project and give us some of that?
I think we're trying to be careful not to oversell. I think as this project unfurls, and particularly at the end, we'll be able to talk about the number of speed restrictions that come off. It will be, I would say, a strong majority of them. I think we're not quite sure we can get all of them, but it is going to be a healthy majority of them. One caveat I will say is that the speed restriction does not come off on day one. And I just want to be explicit about that. What happens is you run trains over the area where the track has been repaired. Our maintenance away team then evaluates it after a number of days. If they feel that something hasn't settled, that there isn't any issue where they need to go in and readdress it, then we'll lift the speed restriction off. So I just want to caution, September 19th, you may still have those speed restrictions in place. September 29th, the speed restriction, barring any additional work that's needed, the speed restriction will be lifted by then. And likely several days before. But again, I let my maintenance away team make that decision. I don't make that decision.
Yeah. So during the press conference the other day, you were asked a question about the value of all of this and the cost, and I'm going to try to weave in some of the audience questions here too. A couple of dimensions of this, of course, are the service plan, but also the value of the work to be done. Can you put some numbers on this?
I mean, the numbers I can give are, lost fare revenue is going to be somewhere on the order of $3 to $3.5 million. We are authorized to spend up to $37 million on the buses. As far as the projects themselves, I don't have a total for that, but outside of a handful of change orders, all of these projects, and I think that's important for folks to understand. Almost, I would say none of these projects are new, right? The T knew that these projects needed to be done. We just had them sequenced on, nights, weekends, over a longer period of time. What we're doing now is collapsing them into this 30-day period, and that's partly because it's more efficient to do so. I think that's partly one of our takeaways from the FTA directive was putting a speed restriction in place and then waiting to fix it down the road is not the approach they want us to take. They want us to make sure that our teams have access so that we can make the repairs in a more expeditious manner. So I kind of don't have a total number, but very little of it is additive to our existing capital plan. It may be just the timing is different now.
Is this mostly all contractor work or hybrid of in-house and contractor? How's that being approached?
It's a mix of both. It's
Yeah.
our maintenance of way team. It's a number of capital delivery teams, and that's part of the choreography, obviously, of getting all those groups mobilized and getting them coordinated with one another. Because as you mentioned, if you've got 4 access points and you've got a number of projects and a number of work zones, you need to be thoughtful ahead of time.
Okay. During some of the communications about this, the introduction of the new Orange Line cars came up, and if I understand correctly, at least the plan is to try to decommission the old fleet while this is going on, and that people will come back and experience, if I heard it right, all new vehicles. Is that the plan? Did I hear it right? And could you update us on the new Orange Line car project?
Sure. The our goal at the end of this is that a customer will be exposed predominantly to the new cars. I can't say that it will be absolute every train set. I can't say that every train set will be brand new, but the vast majority of them will be. So we're already in the process of decommissioning the oldest of the Orange Line fleet, but there will still be the occasional older Orange Line fleet in service. We're evolving to a point where it will be all, but we can't quite guarantee everyone. But I think the language that was used in the press conference was the service will be predominantly new cars.
And what's your goal for that project being complete, the Orange Line vehicle?
That project, we're in the process. We've got more than half the cars delivered that were in the order. Off the top of my head, I don't have the end zone of when exactly that will be. But I think we are all rowing in the same direction in terms of wanting all new cars. It's obviously a better rider experience. They're more durable. The advancements both facing the customer in terms of providing information, redundancy and air conditioning, overall comfort, greater accessibility, I think are obvious. The advancements facing the MBTA, they're more reliable. They provide a tremendous amount of data. When there is an issue with the vehicle, it's very easy to diagnose because you're getting so much information. We want to get those cars in service as soon as possible.
Great. So I want to spend more time on the specifics of the service plan and weave in some audience questions. There was several questions have arisen, and if I watched the news last night, it appears that there's some changes with respect to service to Chinatown, Tufts Medical Center. Several questions in our chat about that. Can you update us on service to that area?
Sure. On kind of the base service that we announced earlier. The intent is that Boylston is the alternative to the Chinatown and Tufts stop. Boylston being roughly a block away. Boylston is not an accessible station. I just want to sort of note that. So there will also be the option. We will have accessibility vans available at Park Street and at Copley for folks who have accessibility needs and need transport to either to Tufts or Chinatown. What I think what you're referring to is with some feedback from the community, feedback from the city, and I should note we've had a very strong partnership with the city of Boston. Feedback from them, we are adding a supplemental shuttle that runs from Government Center to Tufts to Chinatown back to Government Center. That's going to run every 30 minutes from 5 to 7 a.m. and then 8 p.m. to 1 a.m. So that is going to be essentially a circulator there, and we are also adding an outbound stop on the Silver Line 4 route at Chinatown, which we didn't previously had. And I know there are plans in the works to try to increase frequency on the SL4 as well. So that's what's changed. I think our challenge always is running buses through the heart of downtown Boston is extraordinarily challenging. We've tried to address that by piggybacking on the Green Line here. We're also going to try and run as much additional service on the core of the Green Line as we can as well to absorb the needs of our customers.
There's a question about the use of technology for communications purposes, apps. I think you have on your website a trip planner type. Will that be available or updated to give people information that will be responded to with the routes available or the alternatives available during the diversion? Is the trip planner going to be functioning that way? And is there any app-based types of technology that you plan to use?
Yes, and this is where I will show my advanced age. I cannot explain to you how it is done, but I can assure you that we have updated the data feeds that we make available, not only to our own MBTA trip planner, but to the third-party apps that utilize our data. So they will have up-to-date information on the various closures and diversions. So I think, those are all really useful tools. The MBTA, and this predates me, but, the MBTA has always put itself in the position of we wholesale data to the third-party app community, and we make sure that stream of data is as accurate as it can be. So we've updated it with this information, and then those third parties, off the top of my head, there's Transit, there's City Mapper, there's a bunch of third-party apps that utilize this information in a different way, but they should all be up to date with the various closure information.
Okay, and I know you produced a rider's guide. That's available online and will be updated as adjustments get made, like this Chinatown Tufts Medical Center adjustment.
Yes, it's mbta.com/BBT 2022, but I believe it is actually on the front page of our website. So that is the product in question.
Stick with the digital version. So let's get into some transit guide talk here, Steve. So I want to talk about the commuter rail dimension of it and then the bus dimension. So it appears that the commuter rail piece of it is really a key underpinning of the plan, suggesting people take commuter rail. And you mentioned in the plan that there's additional trains from the various lines going to make stops at stations they might not have stopped before. That said, the headway or the time between trains is still much more significant than you would expect on a rapid transit line. In some cases, if I read the schedule right, inbound and outbound, 25 to even as much as an hour between trains. How do you expect that to play out? And given the existing ridership on those lines, what kind of crush do you expect on commuter rail? And is it as good an alternative? It's reliable in terms of being there on time, but waiting an hour where you would have waited 10 minutes is less than optimal alternative.
Yeah, I encourage people, take a look at the rider's guide. It has the headways, particularly during rush hour. I don't think there's more than 45 minutes between trains. We've added, and in many cases, for instance, the Forest Hills inbound run 7 trains over 3 hours is actually way above kind of a typical, the typical schedule we run on a single line is a train per hour. So it is a significant increase in headways. Where we can, we are going to add coaches so that we have additional capacity. And again, part of this is also asking people to take a look and plan ahead, and also plan their commute in order to catch that train, rather than, for folks who have the option to do so, showing up when the train is going to show up. And I'm asking also our T staff, for folks who may not be used to riding the commuter rail, to sort of encourage people to get on the commuter rail, have Charlie cards available to give to people if they don't actually have them. I know I've seen it myself in my own neighborhood. I've seen the question arise, hey, I travel through Forest Hills every day. Where's the entrance to the commuter rail? People have never thought of it as an option, and we certainly want them to think about it as an option and think about their commute and plan around it, because I think I think probably in the majority of cases, it's going to be a more efficient ride if you're either going all the way into town, or in the case of the in the case of the southern leg, you've got stops at Ruggles and Back Bay as well.
Yeah, a question in the chat about the free, the Charlie card. If it's free, you're asking people to show their Charlie card. The question is, why bother with the Charlie card at all if it's free anyway?
Well, I mean, I think we want to have some knowledge that they're T riders. We're asking it as a simple compliance thing. And if people, we'll have ambassadors in all of these stations with Charlie cards available if you need one.
Okay. The question on the buses, the map you showed, essentially shows the buses following, the Orange Line route on the north side and on the south side. Transit riders know that in some cases today on either the rapid transit or on a bus, if you're in the kind of middle of the route, the vehicle may show up full and you don't get on. So I assume these vehicles are, 45-seat vehicles maybe.
Yeah, roughly intercity buses. Yep.
Standing, is that usually intercity buses don't allow it? Will there be standing allowed on buses?
I believe I may have to get back to you on this, but I believe we will allow standing. We'll also have supervisors at all the stops who will be monitoring the buses. So if we need to dynamically, like you said, if we need to dynamically redistribute buses, we have the capability to do that. If we need to dynamically dispatch a bus as express, the supervisors have the latitude to do that. So we do have some flexibility. We will have, like I said, supervisors in the field. We've got 2 command centers set up for the north side and the south side that will be monitoring these things. So there will be a significant level of oversight. I don't rule out that there may be some growing pains here as we sort out the best route. We've done a lot of work to make these routes as good as they can be. I think folks have probably seen evidence already where we've been able to stand up bus lanes. Again, huge thanks to our municipal partners who make that happen. We don't own the roads, we don't own the traffic signals, so those partnerships are critical.
Yeah, you anticipated my question. If a bus, loads full at Oak Grove, you're going to make people upset at you. If a full bus pulls up to Malden Center or Wellington and no one can get on, and of course the people on the bus will be upset at you that why are we bothering stopping? So it does feel like, that dynamic, decision making is going to have to be part of the equation for either express buses, maybe introducing some runners directed buses that fill in gaps here and there.
Yeah, but I think we'll try to be thoughtful of that, and we'll adapt as we go.
Yeah. So I have a question. I mean, you alluded to this a little bit, but I want to probe it a little bit more. I know you're a data guy. The T collects a lot of data through the Charlie cards or at the fare gates, and this particular line right now is carrying 100,000 plus people coming from different neighborhoods. I mean, if you look at the entire Orange Line, different needs, different demographics. Some of the neighborhoods on the Orange Line include transit-dependent commuters who rely on the T and don't have a remote option. And just as you're thinking about the, the dynamics of the bus service, is there a plan to track the impact by neighborhood so that you can also make adjustments in capturing any inequities that emerge during the 30-day shutdown? You're serving some very different types of riders along this route.
I mean, I think one of the things we'll be tracking obviously is ridership, and if we're seeing higher levels of ridership in one part of the system and not in the other, we have the ability to reallocate buses. We will not be. One of the things where we don't have as much visibility is folks are not tapping their Charlie card to get on the shuttle buses. The shuttle buses are free. So essentially what we have are the supervisor estimates from the field. We don't kind of have a hard data collection point. But I think we will look at where crowding is. And, if we need to do more from either a, shoe leather perspective or a rider education perspective about the commuter rail, I'm happy to redouble those efforts if we need to, because my experience, and this is personal for me, because I always hopped on the Orange Line at Forest Hills until one day my cell phone app said hop on the commuter rail, and it was sort of like a light dawns. It was like, oh, I can get on the commuter rail at Forest Hills and get where I'm going most efficiently. I think in some cases, if folks haven't tried another mode, it's going to take a little bit of a nudge to get them to try it. So we're hopeful that all the information we've provided is that nudge, and if we need to think up other strategies over the next 30 days, we'll do it.
We have a question from another person that appears to know the transit jargon, Steve. So about 200 buses, where are they going to be staged?
Oh gosh, they're going to be staged. They're going to be staged all over. We've rented out a couple spaces. I've got a handful of specific locations, but I'll keep that under my hat. I mean, we're confident, obviously, that we can get the buses deployed where they need to be, but it's a huge effort. We've got kind of a couple overnight locations off the ends of the lines where we're going to be holding the buses as well. But it is a massive effort.
You mentioned the work with the Mayor Wu and the City of Boston and other mayors, towns, certainly other organizations that are actively working to be supportive, blue bikes and so forth. Talk about the effort to, I guess, coordinate these activities. For example, last night, DCR announced some closures and detours along the Southwest Corridor taking place during the Orange Line shutdown. It turns out, according to my information, that the work they're doing is get ready for people using bikes along during the shutdown, not necessarily being out of service during the shutdown. But talk about that coordination and that communication and how that's taking place.
Sure. We've had, I think we've had, particularly at a staff-to-staff level, we've been communicating on this since before the announcement, just because there's so much planning about rights of way and individual, individual kind of tactical, what's the optimal way to run these buses. I think there's also been good communication. I've had a lot of contact with the City of Boston. We've initiated a meeting of all the mayors now on a weekly basis along the entire route, so that we keep not only the staff to staff lines of communication have been open, and we also have an executive level communication. A couple of the things that you mentioned, I want to be clear to give credit where credit is due. I'm reading off the City of Boston's homework here a little bit. I think they worked pretty hard yesterday to make sure that DCR closure you referenced, I believe, is it is kind of a partial tactical closure of certain spots on the Southwest Corridor from Friday to Sunday in an effort to have everything in shape for the Monday morning commute. The Blue Bikes initiative, again, all credit to the City of Boston on that one. I'm not up to speed fully on the details, but I believe they have an online point where you can get a 30-day free pass to utilize the Blue Bikes. And then one of the things we've done in partnership is we have provided a number of 7-day passes for them that they're going to distribute to parents of school-age children in Boston who travel to and from their school. And I should note that is district schools, charters, privates, and parochials. It is school-age children in Boston, all of whom travel. There's not yellow school bus service in the city of Boston. All of those students who need transportation travel on the T. So those 7-day passes are now available to parents who want to do travel training, because one of the issues here is that school begins in Boston on, not positive of the date, I think it's September 7th or 8th, and this obviously will run through Sunday, September 18th. So, roughly for that first week and a half of school, students, the students who travel on the Orange Line are going to have to find alternate routes. I think this is a particularly acute issue for parents of 7th graders, who many of whom are traveling on the T for the first time. I have a great deal of faith in the older kids and their ability to determine alternate routes, because many of them at times I think are more fluent in the system than I am. But this is a nice thing just to give parents some peace of mind if they want to go out and they have the ability to do so, travel some of these alternate routes and understand the best way for their kids to get to school.
Steve, there's a comment / question that's actually quite detailed about the map you showed, with some specific suggestions that about the map, and asking more detailed questions about stops and routes. I guess a two-part question. One is if anyone, commuters, have suggestions about the presentation of the service plan, is there a way for them to communicate them back to your team? And two is, beyond the high level map, is there a place for them to get more detailed information about the exact roads that buses are going to travel on, where the stops are, that sort of thing?
I believe there is a specific map up on our website, but I can double check that. I know we presented it at the press conference itself, and I'm wondering. Yes, you can certainly direct information to the T. I'm not sure what the correct email address is, but I can get that to you. And if folks have feedback, we're happy to receive it.
Yeah, we've actually, on our chamber website in the Orange Line page that we set up, we provided a feedback mechanism too. So if people have questions, we can get them over to Steve and the team.
And let me follow up with your staff and give you a means to transmit that to us.
So Steve, we're winding down on time, but I do want to give you the opportunity to, just issue the call to action. How can employers help? What's your message to employees, riders, as we start our 30-day journey tomorrow?
Well, thank you all for your forbearance as we begin this journey. It's an important journey for the MBTA. It's an important journey for our riders. It's about prioritizing safety, putting safety first over everything else. And that includes, in this case, putting it over service, making the right decision in terms of making the system as safe as it possibly can be. For riders, really encourage you to check out the Rider's Guide to think about your options and to plan ahead as to what the best option is for you. For employers, we'd ask, again, flexibility to the extent that people have the opportunity to work from home or work remotely. We ask that you provide employees the flexibility to do that, and also a level of understanding that in some of these cases, there's a reason we have a subway system. It's faster than running shuttle buses. The shuttle buses can't possibly be as fast as a fixed rail system. So in many cases, people's commute is going to be longer, and we ask for some understanding in that regard. And I think finally, we ask, we thank you in advance for your patience. This is a heavy lift for everyone involved, both the MBTA and everyone who depends on the Orange Line. So we thank you in advance for your patience, and we look forward to reopening an Orange Line that is more reliable, and that is faster, and that is safer. So thanks again, and thank you for the opportunity to speak to everyone today.
Well, thank you, Steve, for not only making the time, but also answering some tough questions. We appreciate that, and I know that the people that have joined us today appreciate it as well. Thank you all for joining us today for this session. We, of course, wish Steve and the T Godspeed as they undertake this massive challenge. Really, I don't think it can be understated. What the next 30 days of work is going to be like. A couple of commercial messages as we end. The next Chamber featured event is our 2022 Fierce Urgency of Now Festival. We hope you and your colleagues will join us September 14th through the 17th for an important and impactful week. And mark September 29th on your calendar for our next Government Affairs Forum, where we will feature Boston Mayor Michelle Wu and her first major address to the business community. You can find out more about those events and all Boston Chamber activities at bostonchamber.com. And take a look, in addition to what's available through the MBTA, take a look at our Orange Line webpage as well there at bostonchamber.com. Once again, thank you to T General Manager Steve Poftak and to our audience for joining us today. That concludes this event.
Thank you.
Thanks, Steve.